Hey there, folks. This is Ben Hauck, editor of Stand In Central. I'm here with Elizabeth Ann Corkum. Elizabeth Ann Corkum, or Liz as I'll call her in this interview. She is an actor who's also done some standing in. Say hi, Elizabeth.
Hello, fellow stand-ins.
So, Liz, tell me about some of the people for whom you've stood in.
Well, over the last couple years in New York, I've stood in for day players on dozens of different films and TV shows. But most lately, I stood in on the television show Blue Bloods for Jennifer Esposito for 4 months.
Oh, and then as I understand, you also left that gig too, is that correct?
I did. I left the gig about halfway through the filming season.
Okay, well that's what I'd like to talk a little bit about. What is it like to leave a stand-in gig? And you had a lot of experience in leaving that. It was a very difficult experience for you.
Yes, it was.
Mm-hmm. And you were balancing an acting career too, and that's what fed a lot of your decision in leaving the show. Is that correct?
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about what went into why did you take the job to begin with? What was going on in your life at the time? And we'll start with there.
Sure. At the time, this was back in September of 2010, I was very much about to grab my career by the chain and jump in 100%.
Your acting career.
My acting career, yes. And ironically, I got a call from casting offering me a job to stand in for Jen on this new pilot, Blue Bloods. I didn't even have to go to any camera tests or interview or do any of that. They just handed me the job.
Which is pretty sweet and tempting, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were going to give me 24 hours to think it over. And I said yes, just because I couldn't really say no to a consistent job at that point in time. And I'd never done a full-time stand-in job, and I thought that I could learn something from it and go from there.
But it wasn't just that easy of a decision for you because you had just decided that you were going to just jump into your acting career, right?
Yeah, it was... well, I took the 24 hours and definitely weighed the pros and cons. And I made a deal with myself that I would take the job, but I would take it a day at a time, mentally and emotionally, and that I wouldn't let the stand-in job get in the way of me bettering myself as an actor and prioritizing my own career. Mm-hmm. Which became a hard balance towards the end of it.
Right.
But
in reality, though, you ended up spending a lot more time on involved with that project than you realized, right? Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I was there about 7 out of 8 days per shooting episode.
Mm-hmm. And how did your acting career? How did you manage your acting career in that time?
I didn't. I mean, I did. In that I still made it to what I could on the weekends and on days that Jen had off and I had off on set. I would try to go see a modeling agency or go to a theater audition or do something productive with that day. But I was more or less locked into the Blue Blood schedule.
Mm-hmm. And so that left you a little bit frustrated, am I to assume?
It didn't leave me really frustrated as much as I started to feel as the months rolled by artistically unfulfilled, that I really enjoy standing in and that Blue Bloods was a fantastic set to work on. But, it's kind of hard when you're watching months go by and opportunities go by, but I'm on set standing in and I can't take part in any of them.
Right. So in September 2010 when you took the job, and you left the job in December of 2010, about 4 months later.
Correct.
I'm guessing that this build-up, this frustration, this lack of artistic expression was taking a toll on you, and that fed into your decision. What fed into your decision to leave the show?
Well, you're right. It did kind of snowball for me. And also, I actually had advice from one of the producers on Blue Bloods to leave the show as a stand-in to pursue my own career. His advice was that being a female actor who's trained in their 20s, this is really the time to be working on being my own first teamer and not to be a second teamer. And that he's seen so many actors get locked into standing in and being stuck there for a season to 5 seasons to 10 seasons on something. And that I realized I could be in a spiral where I could wake up 10 years from now and still be a stand-in. And that kind of was a kick in the pants for me, where being a female actor in her mid-20s, it was like, okay, it's kind of now or never. I can always go back to standing in 10 years from now. I know I'm good at it. I enjoy it. But I I'm an actor first and foremost.
So this is coming from a producer of the show is telling you, get out, get out.
Correct. Yes.
But when it came down to deciding to leave, was it that easy for you to? How did you decide to leave it?
No, for me, it was very difficult to leave the show. Like I said, it was a really great set to work on. And I felt like I was part of a consistent job. And so I really struggled with the decision of leaving a paycheck that was consistent, because as an actor, that doesn't happen very often. And I didn't want to let down the crew, which sounds bizarre because I wasn't on a contract. And
they become kind of a family for you, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, exactly. It's like going to school every day, or going to grown-up jobs every day where you see the same people all the time. And I knew once I left, I wasn't going to see them anymore, and there was some nostalgia about that. Mm-hmm. But I also couldn't stay just for the sake of staying for that reason either. So, but it was very difficult for me to make the decision to leave. Thankfully, when I did announce on my last day that I was leaving, the response was really great. It was really supportive. For the most part, everybody was just really happy for me and understood entirely 100% that this is what I had to do for me in my career.
Wow, so you had the anxiety going into making the decision.
Yes.
And then when it actually came to doing the decision, instead of having this kind of big storm of negativity at you, it was positivity that you experienced in making the decision.
Yeah, it was definitely positive. I mean, some of them were very sad. I think some of them were freaking out about who they were going to hire to replace me, mm-hmm. but that's all natural, of course, too. But overall, it was just a very positive response, and everyone was really happy for me.
So now you're prioritizing acting in your life, am I correct? And it's standing in as supplementing your career in some way. Is that it?
A bit, yeah.
A bit. How do you balance stand-in gigs with your acting career now? I think that's especially interesting for some people listening. When it comes down to when does stand-in jobs win for you, and when do you not take a stand-in job or turn one down and you make sure you do the acting work?
Well, for me, I'm prioritizing, if I take stand-in work at all, or background work at all, I'm prioritizing it being SAG work, because I have been getting my health and pension through the Screen Actors Guild, and to me it's still definitely a priority to get those days, get those hours in so that I can maintain my health care next year. But what I do now is I typically look at my schedule the week ahead of time, and of course there are certain auditions that pop up last minute, but a lot of the theater stuff, which is what I do a lot of, those are scheduled in advance, and I can kind of pick and choose which days I'm going to definitely pick for auditions, and then try to find, depending on the week, it's always, very different, somewhere between 1 to 3 days a week where I will then submit myself for SAG work and try to collect some SAG days.
I see. So you sometimes balance the if it's a SAG project, you sometimes balance that might win out over an audition if you feel like you need to.
Exactly.
But other times those auditions will win out for you, and that helps you stay focused as an actor. Am I reading you correctly?
Yes, because I feel like if I let stand-in work or background work take priority once again, it's this vicious cycle where you can get sucked into it, and yeah. So
my last question is around what advice do you have? What practical advice do you have for actors who are dedicated to their career, who happen upon a stand-in gig, whether it be, let's say it's not just a day-to-day gig, because I imagine that's not so much a problem, but let's say they land themselves in a similar situation with you. They end up offered a stand-in job, a regular stand-in job on a pilot that could take off. What advice do you have for that person?
Well, first I'd say congratulations. You're given quite an opportunity here. Because most actors don't have day-to-day work, so hurrah for you. And think about it before you accept it, because it might be something that's going to consume most days of your life.
And take away from their own acting career,
Exactly. Weigh the pros and cons. And if you decide it's worth taking the job at that time, keep your eye on the prize if you're an actor. My advice would be still submit yourself for auditions, go-sees, what have you, and if you end up landing an audition or something like that, don't be afraid to take it. Don't be afraid to take a day off from standing in. Casting, they understand. They might make it sound like it's going to be the end of the world replacing you, But if you're a 5'7" brunette like me, there are a dime a dozen in New York City, and there's a good amount of them that can also stand in. So, take your day here and there for those opportunities. You have to be, looking out for yourself.
And you're not advising being reckless about that, though.
Of course. No, of course not. No. I would, of course, give heads up to casting and communicate with casting and or your second on set as much as possible about any of these things. I would also advise, too, if you're going to have the opportunity to take a couple days off from standing in, let your first teamer know too. Let them know, like, hey, I've got a couple auditions. They're going to find a replacement for me. I'm sure they'll be great. I'll be back on, Wednesday, whatever. And that kind of, it's nice. That way you have a kind of camaraderie with them. They look at you as an actor. And if the crew loves you and set loves you, they're not going to replace you with somebody who's coming in for a day or whatever. You don't need to worry about that. Yeah. As long as you're professional and responsible, at the end of the day, they'll all be happy for you. You've got an audition. Yay!
Well, Elizabeth, thank you. I want to thank you for letting me interview you. And is there anything else you want to say real fast?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
That's cool. You can check out a little bit more information about Elizabeth at elizabethancorkum.com. This is Ben Hauck, editor of Stand In Central, saying bye-bye.